And we're live. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 104 of Mirrorless Minutes. That's not Mike on the other side of the lens there. Hey, what's going on, Mark Miller? Welcome to the show again, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Definitely.
Always a pleasure.
You know, it's like we were just hanging out the other day.
Yeah, not too long ago.
So we're on episode number 104, and it's titled "Back from the Great North" or something along the lines of that. I don't even remember what I titled it. I just know that we're fresh off of this workshop that we did, and actually one of the workshop attendees is watching right now, Amy. Hey, how's it going, Amy? We're gonna talk about something that you made, Amy, here in a little bit. But before we get into that, I just wanted to let everybody know that we're going to be talking about the workshop that Mark and I just concluded in Northern Michigan. And we're going to talk about our plans for 2019. We're pretty stoked on that. Got some cool takeaways from this workshop and some ideas for 2019 that we're going to work on. And so I guess first, Mark, let's just talk a little bit about where we were at. So you want to kind of name drop a couple of locations that we stopped at while we were in Northern Michigan?
Yeah, well, outside of exciting Munising there, big city, no cell service. We got to check out a lot of cool waterfalls in the area, some real amazing shorelines. We hit Wagner Falls, Memorial, Elliott Falls. That one was,
Siri loves you tonight.
Siri's talking to me. And Elliott Falls, which I was pretty interesting. Not at all what I expected it to be. So
yeah, definitely. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that one because I chose that one specifically for the letdown factor, just because so Elliott Falls, and I don't know, do you have an Elliott Falls photo to share tonight by chance?
I don't. I started working on it, but I wasn't far enough into it.
I'll make sure I get links to people so they can see Elliott Falls or some of the workshop attendees shots of Elliott Falls. Everybody made just astounding photos on this workshop. But Elliott Falls is one of those ones where I say that I chose it for the letdown factor because it's quite literally like 24 inches tall. It's not even a waterfall. It's just like water running off the edge of this stone outcropping. But prior to actually going there in person and all the photos that you see of it, it looks big. It's really cool looking. And so it was chosen as a way to teach people about perspective and how using an ultra wide angle lens can really increase the scale and scope of things, especially small things, by getting up close with the lens. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to mention that, you know, that we stopped at something that at first glance probably looked really disappointing. But then once everybody got up close to it and started shooting, they realized, okay, wow, this is actually kind of cool. We're getting cool shots here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not everybody got to shoot it due to the incoming weather, the wind and whatnot. I think Amy and Brian Bright were actually the only two that got to get up close to it and shoot it, other than us, because we got there the day before. But I think a few people took some zoom lenses and tried to shoot it from distance. I haven't seen any of those yet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing those.
I'm curious to see how those turned out, but it is definitely a neat one. And I know Brian got himself pretty wet there, sitting there. The wind was picking up and he was getting splashed pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny too that you mentioned the weather being a factor there. So like with any event, obviously weather's out of our control. We had just hoped for the best, and we did run into a little bit of rain. It was just a brief little bit of drizzle that kind of blew through, but we also had just insane winds, actually gale force warnings while we were up there for one day. So that made for an interesting stop for sure on the workshop at the lakeshore there.
Yeah, it was it was insane. The amount of wind that was coming there and the waves. I think it was really cool for everybody to see, to get out there when we made it out to the beach to try and shoot it. I was floored by the size of those waves and how hard they were hitting.
Yeah, it was like 15-foot surf on the shores of Lake Superior. And it's funny too, because this was kind of one of those things where we just decided, hey, we're going to have to hit the beach and shoot the waves. And it wasn't really necessarily part of the original itinerary, but it just shows you kind of how a workshop works out. That on our workshop, Mark and I did this a little bit last year, but we really did this a lot this year, where we had an itinerary in place. And I always tell people on a workshop, itineraries are fluid. because you never know. You never know about weather. You never know if somebody might not feel well, or there are a lot of things that come into play during a workshop when you have 10 people that are all trying to shoot together. And so what we ended up doing is kind of voting on a couple of different things and throwing out a few options. And I'll show actually a photo from one of those options that was selected on day 2 of the workshop here when we do an image share in a minute. But just wanted to kind of mention that, if you're new to workshops, just go into it open-minded. Just know that, that whoever your workshop coordinators are, that there are a lot of moving parts that go into it, and just being open to change is always a good thing. We had an incredible group of people that were super pumped on like everything that we did, everything that we suggested. Everybody was like, yeah, let's go do this, so that kind of helps too, to have a group like that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun, and we put them through quite a bit of work there in the 2 days. So
yeah, we did. It's funny too that you mentioned that, because that's something that I wanted to talk about, and this will kind of let people know what next year's workshops are going to be like. We're planning 2 workshops next year. We're definitely going to go back to the Upper Peninsula again. It's so beautiful up there, and it's our home state. So naturally we want to do at least something in our home state. And Mark and I are just now starting to lay the groundwork for what that next workshop is going to be. We're already planning it similar region to where we're at, except actually a little bit further west into the Upper Peninsula. Yeah, sorry, Steve. I got like a bunch of stuff hanging up back there. My wife doesn't like that so much. But we're looking at, instead of being based in Munising, Michigan, we're going to be based out of Marquette, and then we'll work our way a little bit east for some things, and then work our way further west for some other things. So I'm just going to do that pitch right now. If you're interested in visiting the Upper Peninsula next year, and once you start seeing some of the photos from this workshop, you'll probably consider it. Just swing over to meetup.com/mirrorless adventures and sign up over there. Again, it doesn't cost anything to sign up, and you'll get notified if we're doing workshops that you might be interested in. And that'll probably be, I'm thinking like a spring workshop is kind of what I'm thinking, or midsummer workshop. We're also talking about a spring workshop. I'm kind of jumping ahead of where I was originally planning on doing the show here, but we're also talking about doing one in the Smoky Mountains in the spring. Mark and I have been doing a lot of talk about that. We had a 7-hour drive home, and I barely had a voice when we got back because we talked so much about the next workshops we want to do. But if you're interested, we'd love to hear from you guys if this sounds like something you might be interested in doing. But we're thinking about waterfalls and wildflowers in the Smokies. So we try to schedule this or time this out around the heart of the wildflower bloom in the Smoky Mountain National Park down there. And of course, there's tons of waterfalls and flowing water down there. I was down there this past spring with my family, and I was just blown away by the whole experience and want to share that experience with another group of people. This one will probably be a little bit smaller of a group size than what we did in the Upper Peninsula. We're basing everything in the UP on a group of 10. And I think Mark and I were talking, and we'll probably scale it back to 8 because we're also talking about doing this as an all-inclusive. Speaking with one of our attendees on this last one, Amy, she had mentioned that she does lots of workshops, and many of them are all-inclusive. And by all-inclusive, what we mean is we'll provide a place to stay. We're looking at renting just a gigantic cabin in the mountains. And so at the cabin, we'll have a place to stay with Wi-Fi and all that jazz. We'll have Mark with us. So we're going to order him pizzas probably a lot. Mark loves pizza. So there'll be some food there, obviously, if you like pizza. But the premise of having a home base, as it were, is that we want to make sure that we can do image processing every night. Mark and I talked a lot about that, and we both love that aspect of photography, is, creating a finished image after you've taken it out of the camera. So we're thinking that we'll do a day of shooting and come back to the cabin and then sit down in groups and go over post-processing of the day's images. I mean, obviously you're not going to process everything you shot that day, but we'll pick out, 1 or 2 that stand out, or have the workshop attendees pick out 1 or 2. And and then we'll work on those images together. And then the next day we'll go out and we'll do the same thing again. And I know that's always been a fun part of the workshops that Mark and I have done in the past. We do the processing like as a Google Hangout. And when I've done them with Mike, we've done them like in a classroom setting. And I'm thinking, why not just do it right on location? So that's kind of what we're thinking about. So for those asking again, meetup.com/mirrorless adventures. And just register over there and you'll be notified every time a new workshop gets added. So remember springtime, wildflowers and waterfalls, and then probably mid to late summer, another Upper Peninsula workshop, unless we time it out for fall. Mark and I have to decide on that. If we want to do a fall workshop again. Fall is great. The weather's comfortable. You run the chance of color, but the weather is just
unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get.
Right. It's pure Michigan weather. It's pretty wild to say the least. So again, just kind of swing over to meetup.com, you guys, and register over there to be notified. I'd like to do an image share. I'd really like you to share some images first, Mark, if you remember how to fire up the old image share over there on your side.
I believe I remember.
This is the part that people that subscribe to the audio podcast hate. But I'll let Mark pull up his photos and kind of he'll explain where we were at, thought process behind the photos, just whatever speaks to him about the images.
All right.
Or not.
We're getting there.
Now we're rocking.
All right. So got the waterfall up there. So this was on day 2. I believe this one was Wagner Falls. One of the ones that we added kind of last minute. Wasn't part of the original itinerary. But I'm glad we made it there because I really like this one. Fortunately, there wasn't too many people around when I got back there, so I was able to jump off the deck there and get right down in the kind of the riverbed. I like to crop up real close and just make the waterfall the focal point there. I like the rocks and the logs down below, just kind of a little bit of a foreground leading up to the big waterfalls there, and then all the dark, lush green around it. Just really a rich, warm picture or image that I like there. That's kind of the way I edit most of my stuff, kind of poppy and saturated. But that was definitely a fun one. Second image here. This was the end of our second day. This was out on Paradise Cove or Paradise Point, depending on who you're asking. Jamie found this last time. He was up in the UP earlier this summer, and we had originally planned to go to a different location. It was a few hours, 2 hours, I think, roughly, one way, and the fan and everyone decided they wanted to spend that time shooting. So we had to make about a 2.2 mile hike one way to get out to this place. And I think everybody about halfway was really debating whether or not that was worth the walk. But once we got out there, it definitely was. It was amazing. Got a lot of shots from that area. This is just one that I was able to do quickly. There's these little puddles all over the rocky shore there. And so I got down real low to get the reflection in it. You see Brian Bright, one of the attendees up there in the center, taking a shot down the coastline. Kind of wish that we had stayed a little bit longer to get sunrise or sunset. So I think it would have been absolutely breathtaking out there. But this was just a little before. Awesome, awesome place. I'm really glad we made it out there. Next one here. This is just a behind the scenes before I show you the edited version. This was on Thursday when Jamie and I got to town early. We ran out to Elliott Falls to take some pictures. There's just tons of dead trees and driftwood laying all over the beach and rocky shore there. So I set up to get a shot. And this is the edited version of it. Tried to make it real moody, dark. Really like the feel of that. Just the warm textures there and the rocky kind of clay shore. I used my NiSi filters on that. I had a 10 stop and a graduated filter on there, 3 stop medium grad, to bring down the sky, get a little bit of milky kind of fluid in the water. Really happy with the way this one turned out. This is the first one I really got into editing. So the last one here, we had a chance for Aurora 2 nights in a row. Unfortunately, it didn't really hit the way we had hoped. This night ended up being kind of cloudy. We went out to Miner's Castle and just tried to see if we'd get lucky enough. And I just edited this one to see how it turned out. There was a little bit of a teal band in there from Aurora, but not a whole lot going on. So unfortunately, the attendees didn't get the big show that we were hoping for. And that's just the way it is sometimes. Weather and clouds, unfortunately, kind of ruin the plans there. So that's all that I've got for tonight.
Super cool. Yeah, you're right. You know, the walk back to Paradise Cove is like 2.1, 2.2 miles. If you have a 4-wheel drive truck or an ATV of some sort, you could probably drive back there. I actually drove back with my family in the summer in a little crossover utility vehicle. I have no idea how we made it. I just know that my wife was holding on to the sissy bar or whatever you call that handle, you know, and the kids were bouncing up and down in the back. You know, everybody thought it was cool except for my wife. She was the only one with common sense, wondering why on earth we're driving. But my family felt the same way. You get back there and it's just like, wow, this is incredible back here. Oh, so yeah. Like you said, everybody, I think after having walked miles and miles over the previous days, I think everybody's a little beat, but when they got back there, I seen the look on everybody's faces. You're like, oh man, yes, this is why we did this. So
I think we all got a energy spike there once you got there and saw what the wait was for, because it was long. I was beat by the time we got there, and then all of a sudden you just see this huge open water with the rocky shores, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind, people, too. So is that so traditionally when Mike and I do workshops together, we take advantage of each of our, I don't say areas of specialty, or just the things that we like to focus on. So Mike is urban and street and that side of the world. And then I tend to be like what we're looking at here, you know, which is countryside and hiking in the woods and stuff like that. So when Mike and I do the workshops together, usually we're near a large urban center, which means that the wilderness around it isn't quite as dramatic as what you'd find in the UP. Doing a workshop with Mark, we're both like junkies for this outdoor adventure. So if you're interested in signing up for these workshops, just be sure to ping us and ask lots of questions about what to expect physically. We did a lot of rough walking. Some of the trails were really gnarly. Everybody hung in there. Not everybody was in like their 20s or anything. You know, a lot of people are retirees and still were able to do this. It's just a lot of hiking and walking. So just something to keep in mind when you're considering maybe some of the workshops that Mark and I do. But with that said, we're definitely taking people to places that are not frequented by everybody. So that's kind of a cool thing, especially Paradise Cove. I probably get a lot of crap from other Michigan photographers for sharing the secret, but it's just one of those things. It's just so beautiful. I don't care. I want people to be able to experience that, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to kind of interject and just throw that out there as a consideration. If you're thinking about hooking up with Mark and I in one of our workshops together, just bear in mind, we tend to get a little burly with stuff. So
yeah, it's a little bit of work, but worth it.
Definitely. Oh yeah, the payoff is always great. So most of my images that I'm going to share, I wanted to make sure I gave just shout outs to the people that were on our workshop. Like I said before, bunch of troopers. I mean, like I said, we put them through hell and back on this workshop with some of the hiking, but the payoff was really good. Mark shared the birch tree that was on the rocky shoreline, the long exposure. That was at Elliott Falls, the beach there that he and I visited on day one, just kind of our own personal shooting. So we brought a group back the next day, excuse me, as part of day one. We're short one person in this photo because she had actually fallen ill. We don't know if it was from eating bad fish at dinner the first night or not. But and she's actually the person who won a spot on this workshop, Wendy. So Wendy's absent from this photo, but I've got her in another photo coming up. But this just kind of shows some of the landscape of where we were at. You know, I always forget to get group photos when we're doing these workshops. It's like one of those things that just always slip my mind. But on this workshop, I actually made sure to get group photos. So I was pretty stoked with that. This is on our second day, our last day. And we got up and we were going to stop at a waterfall. And I decided that I wanted to kind of jet past that. And I wanted to get out on the beach, and mostly for a group photo opportunity, because the waterfall we were going to, I knew it wasn't going to be the easiest to organize a group photo at, which actually we managed to get one there, believe it or not. But, and it was fun, just a nice, I'm going to say, warm up for the day, just doing a little walk on the beach and shooting there, shooting some of the driftwood and shooting the shoreline in the morning golden hour there. So this is our entire work group. And actually on the far left of the image in the blue jacket is our buddy Jared from Vanguard. Vanguard was instrumental in making this like an incredibly cool event. I mean, first of all, they sponsored it by giving away a spot on the workshop. They gave away tripod and bag to the winner, but they also gave everybody that showed up as well a t-shirt with our own logo for the workshop on it. And I think Mark is wearing it right now. You wearing the shirt? Yeah. So Mark's got on one of the shirts that Vanguard made specifically for our event, which was a nice gift for everybody, but also gave everybody a small camera bag and a patch to put on their bag and a hat. Really, really stoked on that. So I just want to throw that out there and say thank you, Vanguard, for being like majorly supportive of everything that Mark and I do. So kudos to that. The next shot is some of the group at Autrain Falls, and Autrain Falls waterfalls are so different and unique from one another. I mean, you go from one fall to the next and they look completely different. And I had an experience in the Smoky Mountains in the spring where I was out in a river trying to shoot some small falls and actually just completely slipped on the algae, wiped out, busted an EM1 Mark II and a 12-100, fell in the water, almost fell over the waterfall. It was a disaster. It was probably hilarious to witness, but on my end, it was a disaster for sure. This series of waterfalls here, which unfortunately you don't see in the image, are the water was really shallow and there was all this algae that covered all the rocks, but it was really cool because the algae actually provided grip, and everybody was able to just walk right out into the river and compose just the greatest shots looking straight up the falls from within the center of the river. Not an opportunity you get very often. And you can see down in the river there, Brian Bright seems to be our stud model of this episode. He's appeared in a couple of the shots here. He's out in the middle of the water here shooting, and it's kind of funny. Brian came out and I was working with him on getting shots set up, and he was asking about filters, and he's another person who uses NiSi filters. And he said, well, what would I be using here? And I told him, and he's like, oh crap, I left that on the shore. And he runs back up, grabs his filters, comes back out. And then I suggested, well, you might want to throw in circular polarized. And he's like, oh, I left that one on shore. So he had to run back out again. But I mean, super trooper. I mean, just back and forth, running through the water, to get the shot. And, his finished images that I've seen so far online are just astounding. And it's really cool to work with people that are willing to sacrifice that comfort, the convenience. It wasn't convenient to have to run back to shore twice, but he did it. And in the end, the images really reflect that. So, and then up on the bridge here above the river going under are some of the other attendees and a couple of people from Vanguard as well. The next one, this is fun. So this is Amy. Amy came here she's on sabbatical, professor in Arizona. She's here in Michigan working on a project as part of her sabbatical. And this is at Mosquito Falls. Mosquito Falls, no mosquitoes there, luckily, because it would have made it even worse than it was getting back there. we arrived there, and the trail map said 0.7 miles to the falls. Everybody's Fitbits told them it was actually about 1.7 miles. So we think somebody just kind of hid the number 1 on that. And it wasn't a flat trail. It was uphill over roots, and it was rugged. By the time we were leaving, my thigh muscles were cramping up from hiking. But another opportunity for us to get right out in the middle of this river and shoot up the falls. And this is actually me. And I think this was taken by John Thomas. John did such a cool job of documenting what everybody's doing. It's so great to have photographers on an event like this. I mean, because everybody's shooting everybody. So there's a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff, but I wore pants that I could zip off the pant leg, and I took off my boots and my socks, and I unzipped my pant legs and just waded out into the frigid ice cold water. You couldn't even feel your feet after a few minutes. But if you look in the background and look closely, you can see Amy's laughing. I mean, after the rigorous hike back there, everybody is just elated to be in such a cool spot, and everybody's laughing and having a good time. And that's part of the experience too, is that, you know, you build this camaraderie and everybody's going through the same things to get the shots, and it just becomes a really fun experience. The next shot, so this is one of mine. This is taken at Paradise Point. I don't know what to say. I love this location. I don't feel like I'm in Michigan anymore when I get back here. I feel like I'm in Maine or somewhere else, just somewhere far removed from anything that I see around here. And this is just an example of doing, I'm constantly telling people, take the features in your camera, do everything you can do with it, and then do something different with it. And so this is a bracketed HDR high res shot. So I'm doing the 80 megapixel high res. I took a single exposure, and then I underexposed by 3 EV, and then overexposed by 3 EV, and then blended those in post into this image right here. So this was shot with the EM1 Mark II, the 7-14 Pro, and I had on a 6-stop ND filter from NiSi, and then I also had on the 3-stop medium grad ND to just kind of tone down the sky a little bit. It's so fun to take like high res photos and then start bracketing them, and then start focus bracketing them, and just getting outside of the box with the whole thought process with that. And then finally, this last one, this is also from that same beach where Mark took his driftwood shot that he shared earlier. This is at the same beach where Elliott Falls is at, and Elliott Falls is way out here in the background. And there's probably somebody photographing the falls at that point because it was before the weather got too bad. Oops. And so I was working with another one of the workshop attendees there, just showing her about putting some sort of a foreground element in there that just has like some drama or interest to it, because down the beach, there's really, I mean, it makes kind of a cool shot, but just having something in the foreground, I think for me personally, is always kind of like a fun feature. So this is shot with a 10-stop ND filter from NiSi, and this is also a high res image as well. So, I mean, the finished product, you know, 80 megapixel single shot, and then the high res images, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but there's more dynamic range in those images. You can pull out a fair amount from the shadows. When this was shot, because I was exposed for the foreground and didn't use a graduated, I ended up with this being all silhouetted up here in the trees, and I was still able to pull out like a ton of detail with that single file. So, again, just kind of think outside the box with your camera features and do things a little differently with them than you might otherwise do. I guess that's really all I've got to share tonight. I do want to answer a question that I saw a minute ago as far as, do I give recommended equipment lists for these workshops? Yes, definitely. That's a part of this whole thing. Going into this, knowing that we were going to be shooting waterfalls, I recommended everybody bring whatever their widest lens is, just because you know, you want to get as much variety in your perspective as you can. I knew going into this that several of the waterfalls were not as big as the images make them look. So I knew we'd want to be close, and that we'd want to shoot with a wide angle lens to overemphasize or to skew the perspective there a bit and make them look larger than life. But I also told people, if you have like a medium range zoom lens, bring that as well, because I knew that there was always the potential that we wouldn't be able to get close enough to certain things. And like Mark said earlier, when we shot at Elliott Falls, on day one, when Mark and I were there were small waves lapping up on the shore, and the waterfall actually dumps out almost right into the water. So you have to be right at the water's edge. We were able to get near the water and shoot. But on day two, when we brought the attendees there, there was a ton of wave action. And I think, what did you say? Only 2 people probably were lucky enough to get up to it.
Yeah, pretty sure just Amy and Brian were the only 2 that got right up in there. Can't remember if anybody else did, and once Brian got in there, the waves started coming in hard, and I was like, man, you better hurry because it's not going to end well. So.
And it's funny too. Like, there was a running joke during a chunk of the workshop that leading up to this one, we actually had people sign a waiver, an accident waiver, which I'll admit we hadn't done in the past. But going into this one, I knew that the terrain was a little rough. I thought, well, we should probably have an accident waiver, for everybody. Brian didn't get his to me, and I kept looking and seeing him doing the craziest stuff, and I'm like, you remember that waiver? Nobody got hurt, and it was a good time. So pretty pumped. And you know what? I'm so happy that Steve asked this question. As far as most of our attendees, Micro Four Thirds shooters, it was about a 50-50 split on this one. There might have actually been fewer Micro Four Thirds shooters if you take Mark and I out of the equation. There was definitely fewer. And that was one of the great things about this workshop, is that it just proved that, I don't want to say proved, it sounds weird, but I just wanted it out there for people to know that you don't have to be a Micro Four Thirds shooter. You don't have to be a mirrorless shooter to attend these workshops. The goal is for everybody to make pictures. I don't care what you're shooting with. If you bring a pinhole camera, whatever, we're going to work with you to get shots. And we had an attendee that almost backed out last minute because they used to shoot with Olympus, had a bad experience with a dealer that they were dealing with and then they backed out of the system completely and went with Sony. Okay. And they were afraid, well, am I going to feel left out? Am I going to be excluded? Is it going to be awkward because I don't shoot Olympus? And I said, look, I don't care what you shoot with. Just come. Mark and I are going to work with you, and you're going to get great stuff. And this person was also worried because they were concerned that they weren't socially outgoing enough as far as, being able to approach us with questions. And I think that person was one of the people that outwardly appeared to have like the best time ever and is already asking about our next workshop. So just keep that in mind, folks. You don't have to shoot mirrorless. You don't have to shoot Olympus. We want everybody to come and have a good time. We want to ensure that everybody walks away with good images. If you don't leave one of our workshops with great photos, it's because you stayed in the hotel room or back at the cabin or whatever and didn't go shoot with us. So yeah, I know I've been talking a lot. I almost feel like I just had Mark on for eye candy because, but I have to continue talking. I've got another thing I want to share real quick too. And this almost caused a car wreck while we were driving. So one of our attendees, Amy Horn, I mentioned that she's a professor in Arizona. She's here on sabbatical and attended our workshop. She also published a book with another person, and I'm such a jerk for not knowing his name, Bruce Tobert. So they published this book, The Art of Macro Photography, and Mark was thumbing through it. So I drove the whole time. Mark co-piloted. So he had the gravy job in the car. So when Amy handed out this book for him to check out and I started seeing the pictures, it was all I could do to stay on the road. The photos are just breathtaking. But what's cool is they explain the entire process. They explain gear. They explain setup. And they cover so much. It's not just like macro photography of like bugs. And it's not just of flowers. There's water drops. There's mushrooms. There's anything that you could think of shooting macro. It's in this book. So number one, I just want to plug this book, The Art of Macro Photography. It's not on Amazon because she's self-published, and Amazon, if you're self-publishing and if you want to make any kind of a return on your investment in something, you can't sell through Amazon. So she's selling it through her website, Horn Designs, HORN designs.com. And you can order the book right there. I highly recommend it. I bought 2 right there on the spot before the workshop was done. But I'm only keeping 1 because I want to give 1 away to one of our viewers. So I'm going to send this to somebody, one of our viewers, and this is how it's going to work. This is only going to be on Facebook. I'm really clamping down on some rules here as far as what it takes to win something from me. Okay, so this is how it works. You need to like the Mirrorless Minutes Facebook page. Okay, number one, find us on Facebook, Mirrorless Minutes. If you're listening to this, darn it, you should know the name, right? And then the other thing, I want to see one of your macro photos, and I want you to post it on the Mirrorless Minutes Facebook page. And I want you to use the hashtag Mirrorless Macro. It's pretty easy. And then I think what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to have Mark go through all those hashtags and pick out a winner. And then I'm going to send you this book. It's awesome. I'll tell you what. So after watching Amy shoot, and she was using extension tubes with her 60 millimeter macro, I ordered the extension tubes that night in the hotel room and they arrived today. So super cool. I can't wait to give this away to somebody. Thank you, Amy, for publishing such an awesome book. She's an Olympus shooter, so you'll definitely get some use out of this. But again, just like anything else in photography, the principles and philosophies are the same across systems for the most part. So anything in here applies to whatever you're doing. So one more time, go to Facebook, like the Mirrorless Minutes Facebook page, and then put a post on there of one of your macro photos with the hashtag Mirrorless Macro. And I'll tell you what, we're going to go 2 shows from now. That's a long time. That gives everybody a chance to get out and take a new macro if they don't have one macro photo, or to work on an old macro photo if they need to, whatever. All right. And I'll put the instructions again on the show notes for this as well, so you'll figure out how to do it. And so Reba asked what extension tube. So actually I had 2. Pat also asked, which Mark's on here twice. Now he's on once. That's
going crazy.
So Amy was using the Kinko extension tubes, and I just wanted to give this a shot first with extension tubes, other than I have some cheap ones sitting up here on a shelf that are non-electrical contact. So I've got some experience with extension tubes, but I wanted the autofocus, and I'll be honest, I was cheaping out. I didn't want to spend over $100 on the extension tubes. So I ended up getting some from Neewer. It's Neewer, I think is how you spell it, on Amazon. And they were significantly cheaper. If they work out good, then maybe I'll invest in the Kinko extension tubes. If anybody's interested, I'll put the link out there for the ones that I got. They were only like $25 and they still have the electrical contacts. So again, kind of cheaped out on it, but if they work, then I'll be pumped on that. So I think that's about it for the show. I know I talked like 97% of the time, and Mark just kind of got stuck sitting there. But again, if you guys got any questions for us, make sure to drop in on the Mirrorless Minutes Facebook page. We'd love to answer questions about this workshop that we did. I'm going to put together a gallery over on the Mirrorless Minutes Facebook page that has the photos that Mark shared and that I shared. It'll probably take me a couple of days to do the gallery, longer than normally I would when it's Mike and I working on this. I've just got some other things I have to work on right now. But I'm also going to put together a gallery, if I can get everybody rounded up that went on the workshop, of what the workshop attendees shot too, because they just made some astounding photos, and I'd love everybody to be able to see those as well. So I guess that's it. Thanks for coming on, Mark. Thanks for just sitting there and not having to talk too much. I apologize.
No worries.
I get rolling and just can't stop. Yeah. It's hard. So
it's a good deal.
So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And like I said, swing over to meetup.com/mirrorless adventures. Sign up, because Mark and I probably before Christmas will have the 2019 workshop schedule laid out there. And like I said, think about it. Waterfalls and wildflowers in the Smokies, and another trip to the UP shooting waterfalls and rugged coastlines. You guys take care. And again, thanks a lot, Mark, for coming on. I appreciate it, brother.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
See you, everybody.